So, Oliver, can I ask you something? Because you are such a piece of history now, and you have been for a long time. But now that we have distance from things and we see the world, as you see what you went through in the 1980s and how the world worked, how do you view that period of time compared to what we're going through now and what you're seeing happening in our country?
Well, quite frankly, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed to see that I was blessed to work for a great president. His goal right from the very beginning of his 8 years was to end the evil empire, and he did. And of course, that finished in the administration of the guy we just buried here a couple of days ago, George Herbert Walker Bush. I look at what we went through back in those days to eliminate one of the greatest threats to mankind that ever was, which is the evil empire, the Soviet Union. It's all its satellites. And I look at what's happening today with terrorism. I look what's going on our border, and I say to myself, the polarization in the city where I have to go to work, Washington, D.C., the polarization is so great that this president cannot get the Congress to do what the Congress ought to do to protect our borders. And a nation that has no borders is not a country. I mean, the meeting yesterday with Pelosi and Schumer and the president in the Oval Office is an example of how incredibly left-leaning our Congress is today. Mm-hmm. That's a shock to me, quite frankly, because I would have thought the American people did not want this kind of thing to be happening.
As I look at what's happening on our border, I've been watching it for a while, and I've been comparing it to what's happening on the borders of Israel. I believe that we are at the beginning of, almost a Palestinian little mini state there on our border, where we are going to be used just like the Israelis are used by the media. They're going to attack. They'll do things just to continue to bring America down to her knees. I think we're in a really bad place to where you can't even recognize truth. I mean, there are people who are refugees that should be allowed in, but there are also people who wish us ill that should not be let in.
Well, and what you just point out, the Israelis did solve that problem. They built a wall, and doggone it, you can't argue with the effect of it. And it stopped the kind of terrorism that Israel was experiencing almost every day. It just eliminated it. And at some point, they're probably going to have to build a wall around Gaza. Look, at the Iranians are stirring up trouble in that part of the world, the likes of which should never have happened, all because the last administration in Washington, D.C. let them get away with it. In fact, helped pay for some of it. Gave money back to them that they used for that very purpose. What's going on our southern border is not the direct consequence of that, but you got to know that they're taking advantage of it. And everybody that knows what's going on the border, you've been there, I've been there, many of our listeners have been. That open border is an abscess in the health of America. And what we saw happening before the tear gas was used with rocks and bottles and feces being thrown at U.S. Border Patrol, it's an outrage, and it should not be happening. My hope is that the president sticks with his guns.
Mine too. Everybody is talking about Cohen and Flynn and everything else today. You've been at the eye of a hurricane like that before. What does it feel like to be in that position? And it must be very lonely.
I was always certain of the outcome. It was just a matter of how long it was going to take and how much it was going to cost to get there. Mm-hmm. I never once doubted what my attorney, Brendan Sullivan, told me repeatedly. It's going to turn out okay. It's just going to be a long, hard slog to get there. In my case, it took 5 years. I was indicted in March of 1988. The trial was over in 1992, went all the way to the Supreme Court, and I was eventually vindicated. The challenge today is they'll never do what they did to me. They'll never put a hearing together like that. They should never have brought back the special prosecutors. I mean, it's the entire opposite of justice. In justice, you have a crime committed, you find the person who perpetrated it, and you give them justice. In this case, you find a person, and then you go try to look for a crime that they committed. And that's just the opposite of what justice really is. And unfortunately, I said this to the president at the time. Don't let this happen. And unfortunately, they allowed the appointment. And you're going to get what you're always going to get with these circumstances is they've got a person. Now they're going to have to find a crime for which they're going to convict him. And of course, that's what Flynn's going through right now.
Wow, great perspective on that.